Hello, my name is Grace, and for those who are watching and don't know who I am a graphic designer and artist based in Melbourne. Recently I've been putting together a little shop of my own designs and art for people to purchase, and it's called D2Hate. For the last few years since I graduated uni, I've been doing design for clients. I worked at a studio, but now I'm pretty much completely freelancing and working on designs for like smaller businesses who are sort of in the well-being space. So that's quite rewarding. This video is actually a process video on one of our tote bags that we released. Actually no, two of them, because there's two designs that are inspired by my cultural heritage. My sister and I immigrated with my parents to Australia when I was about 4 years old. I think growing up we lived in a country town, and there weren't many people of colour there, so we were definitely a minority. And while I loved the peacefulness of like the small town, there were some challenges where people would kind of make comments and like snigger something under their breath. So it wasn't always like, it was definitely tricky navigating growing up in a country town and being from overseas. It would be really nice if parents did actually teach their kids a little bit of basic geography, or at least be aware that there's other cultures out there, or at very least teach them that there's more countries in Asia than just China and Japan. So yeah, it was a tricky time growing up, but my culture is definitely something that I'm now very, very proud of, and I love the Philippines. I go back there all the time to visit my family. So actually it was back in September, I got gifted one of those Ancestry DNA kits, and I thought it was really interesting to see. I'm obviously Filipino, my parents are both full Filipino, but I thought I would take it anyway, just to see the percentage. And when I looked at it, it said I am pretty much Filipino from the north and more the middle and southern areas of the Philippines, which makes sense because my parents are both from those geographical locations, and the split is pretty much 50-50, so that's good. So I thought it would be good to kind of do bags inspired by that, and just from a standpoint like Filipino art and the culture, and the food's only recently getting to Melbourne, but for the most part it is a very underrepresented Asian community here in Australia. So I thought it would be quite nice to kind of show a little bit of my background. The whole process is a lot of experimentation. I think it wouldn't be fair or transparent to kind of leave those bits out. So yeah, here we go. So firstly, I started off by doing research and looking for inspiration. I always wanted to learn more about the tribal tattoos of the indigenous people of the Philippines. As I started school here in Australia, this was something I never really got to learn about. So I did some research into the native tribes of the Philippines, specifically where my parents are from. My mother is from the island of Luzon, from a region called Nueva Ecija, and she speaks Tagalog. And where my mum's from and where I was actually born, the original inhabitants were called the Aita. Now this is a collective name for a group of different tribes in the area. My father was from the island of Negros, with his native tongue being Bisaya, and was from a region called Negros Oriental. They were inhabited by the Ati. I went on a hunt to study any artifacts of these two tribal groups and any other surrounding groups as well. I came across an artifact called the Boxer Codex, which was a manuscript from the late 16th century of the Philippines and important in the study of the history. Now, I just want to put a disclaimer on here that I'm not an anthropologist nor a Filipino art historian, or do I have the resources to actually consult one. But after some research and having a look on Google, I believe this manuscript was produced by the Spanish. For what reason, that's something that historians still ponder on, and I couldn't really find a definitive answer. I found an illustration of what they called the pintados, a name they gave to Bisaya people in reference to their tattoos. Tattooing traditions aren't really widespread anymore. But in those times, both genders wore tattoos, and they had spiritual meanings. They were often used as protection or achievement markings, or as a way of passing down stories from generations. They commonly used geometric designs and symbols of nature. Face tattoos were for warriors and said to evoke fear. Now, it was really hard to find any artifacts on Tagalog tattoos and any tattoos that the Aita people wore. So for this inspiration, I had to turn to surrounding regions which also use geometric lines, symbols of nature, and I also turned to woven textiles. After speaking to my mother, she said that a common characteristic of Luzon designs were the use of geometric shapes. The meanings of each symbol differed from each group. Nowadays, modern tattoo artists now combine contemporary styles with traditional motifs and put their own spin on it and no longer use the needle tapping technique. I ended up incorporating these visual references into my illustrations. For this bag, I took the floral motif, the symbol of birds dispersed around the flower, to offer a cyclic visualization of nature. I also took the triangle pattern motifs, which were believed to symbolize mountains for stability and strength. This wasn't the final design, I actually ended up omitting the black line. For the other, I used a fern-like motif which symbolizes rebirth, health and fertility, and a zigzag pattern which is also commonly found in woven textiles, using that triangular motif again. So here I'm kind of switching now to creative mode, and I'm using a program called Adobe Illustrator, which I'm sure is something that's not unfamiliar to everyone. I designed these designs using the pen tool and just using shapes and extruding them out from each other, and I wanted to kind of experiment on how I wanted it to look, so I ended up going with fern designs with tapered ends and kind of just experimented with the spacing as well. And even then, this actually didn't end up being my final design for when it came down to it. And that just goes to show that a lot of art and design is definitely experimenting, coming up with concepts, realizing there might be a better way to do things, but you'd never know unless you actually tried it first. And after that, I kind of just printed it out, and my initial idea was to just trace it and hand paint everything, because that is something that feels more authentic, it feels a bit more flowy. But once I started actually hand painting everything, I realized I would have to do this to all the ferns, and I was going to sell these. I didn't want to sell them from exuberant price, because you know, the more time it takes, the more you have to up the price. So I ended up using my Cracker, and I transferred these Illustrator files into Cricut, but not without actually converting them to stencils. So from my bag supplier in New South Wales, they gave us two options, and we actually ended up getting both. So we have the one with the natural straps, which looks like this, and they're just like the traditional ones, and where the straps are the same material as the bag, and it's just all one colour. These are really, by the way, quite nice, good quality, thick straps. And then the other option are these black straps, which the fabric is slightly different to the canvas bag, but they're also still thick and really sturdy when you're carrying something heavy, which I have carried a whole ton of groceries once and walked like a couple of kilometers, and it held up really well, didn't damage it, didn't pull or anything. It was pretty good. But I'm thinking I'm gonna use the black straps just because the design is gonna be all black to represent the tattoos. There weren't any colored tattoos, so I think the black straps with the black design would look a lot more striking than just the black on the canvas bag. So here I am now ironing it. I don't know why, but ever since I moved out of home, which was almost 5 or 6 years ago, we've only ever had this little small ironing board from IKEA, and I think I really need to get a bigger one, but part of the reason is because I've lived in apartments and it is quite small. So I'll lint roll it, and then I'll mix some acrylic paint. Acrylic paint is the most recommended for fabric, and I like to mix it with a little bit of fabric medium because this helps it be more flexible and a bit more stretchy, and it doesn't flake off in the wash. So that's something really important that we do. And then I'll go ahead and I'll stencil it like so, and I'm always like moving it around to where the right place is. So you can see when I was talking about earlier that the design kind of changed. Here I ended up getting rid of the black line, and this was kind of at the stage where I decided I didn't really need it and I quite liked it being open. And I just pretty much dab. And then after that, I'll go ahead with a really fine tip paintbrush, and then I'll go and fill in all the stencil lines, because stencils do have to have structure. And I like hand finishing everything. I feel like it definitely adds that more handmade feel. And not all my bags are going to be stencils, it's just these ones because like I said, it would take a long time for the ferns to be completed, and also it is more of a geometric type design, so I kind of want cleaner lines for this bag. Clearly a new day today because I'm wearing different clothes, and that's because I usually leave them about overnight, or 2 to 3 days to kind of, at least overnight, and then 2 to 3 days to kind of dry. And then after that, I just grab an iron and I'll heat set it, and that's what you need to do with fabric paint in order for it to stay put, and so it doesn't run in the wash, and it'll take on the more of the texture of the fabric that it's on, rather than like a raised sort of texture. And then it gets put in the wash just to make sure that it's completely set, and then you take it out, take it out and then let it dry, not in the dryer, and then I give it one last iron and then it's ready to go. So these are the bags. So we have the fern design, and you can see that it was slightly different to what I was doing on Illustrator. I indented the ferns a little bit so there's a bit of space on either side, and instead of bringing it all the way out to the edge, and I think that kind of just fits really nicely. So your eye kind of goes this first and it comes in for the ferns. For the other bag, this is the floral design, which I'm super happy with as well. And you can see that this is really similar to the flower that's shown in that manuscript. And I use a lot of like circular motifs. I added a circle and then the birds. And I quite like the open design. So instead of these triangles kind of being segregated from the flower, it's all part of one image. So yeah, I'm super happy with how that turned out. You can see that they're quite big. They will shrink in the wash, as all cotton canvas does, but a good way to prevent them, if you must machine wash it, I would recommend probably spot cleaning it, but if it's super dirty and it really needs to go in the wash, I would wash it on a hand wash, a gentle setting, and just make sure that use a mild detergent. And then after that, you pull it out of the wash straight away and you kind of stretch it. So you stretch it in all directions, in diagonals, and even like grab a hand and stretch it like this. And these bags, like I said, are really thick, so you can give it quite a good pull. And then once that's done, you want to line dry it, not tumble dry. Never put it in the dryer, otherwise it will definitely shrink much more. So yeah, these are now available on the D2H shop. I'll put the link below. If you prefer using Etsy, they're also available on Etsy. So yeah, that was the process of everything. Thank you for watching, and if you like videos like this and want to see more, just hit the subscribe button. Thanks.